There are a few things you have to have in place, otherwise even the best made cloth will be ripped to shreds. A shade cloth should go in between the edge points of a shade structure, unless it's extremely smooth. This is very important if your area experiences high winds or unexpected microbursts or tornadoes, or really lots of wear and tear over the course of an entire summer. The mistake I made the first year was going with a cheap option that perfectly covered all three sides of the bed here. Even though I sanded it, the wood still had some points where a shade cloth could snag, and it certainly snagged. Wow. All of this is supposed to go that way. The last storm of the season, just days before I intended to take it down, totally ruined the cloth. The second year, I special ordered a custom sized shade cloth because I wanted the shade cloth to go in between the horizontal beams. However, it needed a little extra support because the cloth itself has some give, while the nylon on the outside does not. We used nylon straps we had on hand. You can see that they worked well, but the sun ate through parts that were not protected by the sunshade. I'm not sure if they'll last another summer, but at least it's something we already had on hand. Another alternative is a wire system to support the canopy. You can order a reel of cable and custom size them to exactly the right fit that you need for your canopy. This is more of a problem for sunshades that are horizontal. Shades hung vertically are fine with the grommets that already come on the shade cloth and attach them with bungees. Another thought here is you can save yourself buying custom sized shade cloth if you pre-plan your garden bed layout to the sizes that you see are easily available online. Moving on, morning sun is the best for plants. It is less intense and much better absorbed when the heat is not so bad. So the second lesson with this setup is the east side of the canopy needed to get folded up to allow the gentle rays into the raised beds. Another mistake that I made was not realizing where the sun tracked throughout the day. I put the second sunshade on the south side of the garden bed, but our yard is not oriented fully south, and the hot afternoon sun was doing more damage in the back end of the bed, taking out tomato and pepper plants, so I moved the shade to the back. This not only shows that it's a good idea to be non-committal on the location, but it's also a good idea to track the sun throughout the day before setting up a garden bed, or right after you get it started. I have a couple videos on how to do this so you can have a leg up. I'll put the links in the description. The next tip, consider how you will hang shade cloth. Now, here in Arizona, even a janky structure is a good structure. Wood is what I had, so I protected my gardens with that. Another benefit about being non-committal to a shade structure is that you can test and make sure that your beds are in the right orientation and that nothing should be changed. You can always install a higher quality or permanent shade structure once you're ready to commit. Another tip is not to throw away the ripped shade cloth quite yet. If you have larger pieces, you can reuse some of them to protect smaller spaces. I recycled the large rip cloth from the first summer on a new janky removable structure protecting corn and establishing other plants. Smaller pieces are a much nicer alternative to burlap when protecting seedlings. As you can see in this example, I reused a few square feet to help carrots germinate, and the slick plastic was so much easier to pull a carrot top through than catching them on rough burlap and totally pulling them out. A few more tips. You want to make sure that your shade cloth is installed high enough. So that helps in figuring out what your size needs to be, especially if you have, 6 feet up. And clearly the okra was not that tall when I started out and before I took the shade cloth off. But you want at least a couple feet of space because any radiant heat, you want to be away from the plants. Next up, the difference in color of the shade cloth has an impact on the temperatures just below. Black absorbs a heck of a lot more heat. So in the heat of the day, you're trying to keep heat off of your plants, a lighter color might be better. And then when it comes to the percent that you want, here in the lower states, I want something closer to 50%. If you are further north, perhaps a 30% shade is better. The other thing that you have to consider, especially when you're buying online, is, something can say 50%, but is it really 50%? All of these shade cloths that I'm showing you are all 50%, but there's a stark difference between some of them. Next up, not all sunshades are created equal. One of my first sunshades didn't make it past the first 4 months, but it was already showing a lot of wear, especially around the outside edges where you can see the nylon had separated from the polyethylene cloth itself. In contrast, another sunshade is entering its third summer of service with no signs of wear, which leads to the next question. What are the best options for sunshade? Not just ideas, but what are the actual sunshades that I purchased and used successfully for years, so you don't have to buy one that doesn't last even a couple months, which is exactly what this next video is about. See you there.